Hear ye, hear ye. Esteemed members of the high table, colleagues, students, and friends of the kingdom, I greet you with respect and joy. It is an honor to be with you this evening, and I greet you not just in my name alone, but on behalf of the entire House of Green. With deepest regards and warm salutations, I welcome you to this assembly. May our gathering on this very night be a source of inspiration, joy, gratitude, and mutual blessing. On this night, once a year, we celebrate the beginnings of the Rochester winter, anticipating its primacy in the months ahead. And of course, as 'tis our tradition, on this night we give voice to the story of the legendary Queen's College scholar at glorious Oxford, who was attacked by a wild boar while walking through the woods, saved by a loyal student who crammed the words of Aristotle down the big pig's mouth, choking and croaking it, saving the scholar for the lecture of another day. So much for words will never hurt us. It is this voice and this story that prompts our feasting and our festivities on this fair evening. Yet, my friends and fellow feasters, what if I suggested to you tonight that in our frivolity and boisterous celebration, we have silenced and suppressed the story of our friend, muted and muffled the whispering of the alleged monster, and bridled and balked against the boar, burying our ears in the sand? There is no shortage of hints in our historical records and literature of the animal kingdom attempting to give voice to their own stories. If we would only listen. Consider Aesop's Fables and Charlotte's Web, Dr. Dolittle, the fantastic beasts of Harry Potter's universe, and The Secret Life of Pets as just a sampling of what I speak. The animals will tell their stories indeed, but will they find listening ears among us? When the invitation was extended to me to present the reading of the Boar on this occasion, I began to ponder our annual chronicle, and I quickly questioned whether our popularized version articulated the full story or left some viewpoint voiceless, namely the one who had lost his voice altogether. And so, dear friends, I stand before you today to invite you to listen closely, to lend an ear, to hearken and to hear the heartbeat of the boar. Imagining that just as I had heard stories passed down from one generation to another in my family, I suspected that if we were to find the genealogical offspring of the boar himself, we might indeed gain an honest legacy lore to enhance our understanding. It is not easy to find a boar with which to converse in Rochester, however. Though there is clear evidence of the feral swine, a close cousin to our beast of feast, there is no hard evidence of wild boar in these parts, even on the sacred gowns of Seneca Zoo. Why would we be surprised, though, knowing that Rochesterians lie in wait to hoard provisions for the very next feast? To find an offspring boar, one would have to search for a place where a boar might actually be safe. Where might I find a boar and give ear to his story? Might one be found on the bushes of Eastman, Wilson, or residential quads? Perhaps the Riverwalk west of campus, or Mount Hope Cemetery to the east. All of these I searched with care, but to no avail. And just when I began to wonder if my search would be fruitless altogether, I came upon what is perhaps the safest place a boar could be on our campus: the stacks of books at Grand Rush Rees. Why, sure, there are a few brave souls who still browse and borrow and even read a book or two, but by and large, a boar can hide most safely there from the dangers of making themselves public. The stacks, with a variety of elevators and entries and exits and closures, are a perfect place to hide and escape as needed. It was here, friends, in the Library of Congress B 491 section on philosophy, that I would discover Boris ancestor of the seminal Boar of the Woods at Queen's College. Seems that Aristotle has been popular reading among the boar species since these Oxford days. After an exchange of simple pleasantries and assessing safety on both sides, I requested the offspring to share the boar side of this whole story. And as suspected, his saga was quite different from the tale we have rehearsed over the years. As he slowly emerged from the shadows of the library book stacks, this is the story that Boris shared with me. Well, thank you for asking, my friend. We boars are not used to being listened to. Here is the story that has been passed down through my family tree. My illustrious and famous relative was resting in the woods, having been well satisfied with food, just as you are tonight. And he spent his afternoon reading the writings of Aristotle. The Boar family has always been both strong and intelligent, you know. And while enjoying his peaceful reflections on a sunny afternoon, my forefather's meditation was interrupted by a Queen scholar walking through the woods with one of his students at his side. They were discussing and debating and deliberating quite loudly about the problems of the day. They spoke of some good old days when people were all happy and lived together in joy and peace. But now all that was gone. People just argue and fight. They get angry and all uptight. Now no one is talking to anyone, and no one comes together, and no one gets along. They concluded as I listened to them, or as my forefather listened to them, that they were most terrible times in human history, and they longed to return to days of old. Well, friends, in hearing the lament and longing of the scholar and his student for something better than what was, my great, 18 times back great, having been newly inspired by his knowledge from reading Aristotle, decided to help the humans in their misery. As Aristotle wrote of the importance of listening to all for true education and knowledge, my progenitor surmised that unless humans could come together and share different perspectives while humbly listening to the other, the human predicament would remain hopeless. So in this spirit, my relative set out to share his understanding with the scholar and his student. But as my forefather revealed himself, before he even had a chance to speak one word, he was instantly judged and misunderstood. And it was no surprise to him that he would be misunderstood by the ones who labeled him a wild swine and boorish. The scholar ran, assuming the boar was on full attack, and the student, who seemed frightened and confused, grabbed the first thing he could find to fight against the boar. And the first thing he grabbed was that very text of Aristotle that my ancestral father had been reading and meditating on. And then the student began to beat my cherished family member with it. My forebearer, recognizing that the student unwisely picked a fight he could not win, and while he was being plummeted with the book cover and all, and while recalling another passage in Aristotle that suggested that virtuous actions require sacrifice of lesser things to focus on those things which are most important, my ancestor exercised great restraint, courage, and put a new plan in action to help the humans in their plight. Why, he turned toward the student, opened his mouth wide, and willingly ate the book of Aristotle, causing his instant demise. It was through this great sacrifice that my forefather brought together the whole human community to celebrate, breaking down barriers and walls that had previously divided them and prevented them from living together. So in summary, my friends, those of us in the Boar tradition have celebrated the feast of the strong and wise boar since that original day in the 16th century. commemorating the boar who sacrificed his life for the sake of human community and thriving in the world. It is the highest calling of all boars to follow the example of our celebrated ancestor, giving our life as he did so many years ago. Well, after completing the telling of his events, Boris creeped back into the shadows of the stacks, uncertain that his truth-telling would make any difference at all. And so, my friends, in hearing this story tonight of the true heart of the boar, let us listen deeply, reinvigorated and inspired, not to celebrate the demise of the wild beast, as truly brute words are no better for life and thriving than brute strength. Instead, let us join together this night in gratitude and thanksgiving, with a new openness to one another and to all in our midst. Let us consider that all human thriving comes as people, and wild beasts as well have made sacrifices for others. There would be no University of Rochester community were it not for the sacrifices of professors and students, leaders, administrators and staff, alumni and parents, and researchers and athletes. Let us express thanksgiving and gratitude to all who have sacrificed both for our own lives and for the thriving of our entire community. And finally, in our celebration, let us recommit ourselves to having open hearts and ears to listen and to consider the voices of all, so that we may find life, joy, and thriving throughout the kingdom. So yes, let there be feasting, and let there be thriving throughout the kingdom, now and forevermore, for all.